My dear child, no one expected your name to be spoken that day. A simple family gathering was supposed to change someone else's future. But one unexpected sentence stopped the entire room. And before this story ends, you will discover why your name became impossible for them to ignore. Listen carefully, because what happened inside your soulmate's family home was not an accident. It began as an ordinary conversation, the kind that families have every day when they start discussing marriage, future plans, and the next chapter of life. Relatives filled the room with opinions. Parents shared their hopes. Grandparents spoke about traditions. Everyone believed they already knew how the future would unfold. Names were suggested. Possibilities were discussed. Expectations were placed on the table one after another. The atmosphere felt predictable, controlled, and comfortable. Yet beneath the surface, something much deeper was quietly moving into place. While everyone thought they were planning a wedding, destiny was preparing a revelation. Your soulmate sat among them, listening more than speaking, watching more than reacting. They smiled when necessary and answered questions when asked, but inside their heart there was a secret they had never fully shared. A secret connected to you. A connection they had tried to understand, tried to ignore, and sometimes even tried to escape. Because the truth is that some people enter your life so deeply that even when they are absent, their presence remains. And that was exactly what had happened to your soulmate. Long before this family gathering, your energy had already become part of their thoughts. Long before marriage discussions started, your memory had already found a permanent place inside their heart. Yet nobody in that room knew it. Nobody understood it. Nobody suspected it. As the conversation continued, relatives began mentioning potential partners. One name after another filled the room. Some suggestions were met with enthusiasm. Others were quickly dismissed. Everyone seemed eager to decide what your soulmate's future should look like. Then one family member asked a simple question. If you could choose anyone, who would you marry? The room laughed. It seemed harmless. It seemed casual. But the moment the question was asked, something changed. Your soulmate froze for a brief second. Their heartbeat became louder than the voices around them. Because suddenly the conversation was no longer about family expectations. It was about truth. It was about feelings. It was about the one person they could never completely forget. Don't skip. For a moment they tried to avoid answering. They smiled nervously and looked away. But family members noticed. They began teasing. They began asking more questions. Why are you hesitating? Is there someone you're hiding from us? Is there a name you haven't told us? The jokes continued, but your soulmate's silence only made everyone more curious. The pressure grew. Eyes turned toward them from every corner of the room. And then someone said something unexpected. Maybe there already is a person in your heart. Maybe you've been thinking about someone all along. The room erupted with laughter again. Yet your soulmate didn't laugh. Instead, they lowered their eyes. Because for the first time, someone had unknowingly spoken the truth. The truth that your soulmate had carried silently for so long. Memories of you began flooding their mind. Conversations. Moments. feelings they thought they had hidden successfully. Suddenly those memories felt impossible to suppress. They remembered the way you entered their life. They remembered the emotions they felt but could never fully explain. They remembered wondering why thoughts of you appeared at unexpected moments. Why your happiness mattered to them. Why your pain affected them. Why imagining a future somehow always included you. They had tried convincing themselves it was nothing. They had tried focusing on logic instead of emotion. Yet every attempt failed. Because some connections are not created by effort. They are created by destiny. And destiny has a way of refusing to remain hidden forever. The room waited for an answer. Family members continued smiling, expecting a joke, expecting a random name, expecting anything except the truth. Your soulmate took a deep breath. Their hands trembled slightly. Their heart fought against their mind. And then, before they could stop themselves, one name surfaced inside their thoughts more strongly than every other possibility. Your name. The very name they had never intended to reveal. The very name they had worked so hard to keep private. The very name that suddenly became impossible to ignore. Don't skip. Even then they hesitated. Fear whispered warnings into their mind. What if nobody understands? What if the family reacts badly? What if speaking your name changes everything? But another voice inside them grew stronger. A voice that had been waiting for this moment for a long time. A voice that reminded them how tired they were of pretending. How tired they were of hiding feelings behind polite smiles and safe answers. How tired they were of imagining a future while never admitting who they truly wanted beside them. The room grew quieter. Relatives noticed the seriousness on your soulmate's face. The teasing began to fade. Curiosity replaced amusement. Suddenly everyone sensed that something important was about to happen. Your soulmate looked around the room and realized there was no escaping the question anymore. The answer had already formed inside their heart. They could deny it. They could hide it. They could replace it with another name. But none of those choices would be honest. And honesty has a strange power. Once it arrives, it demands to be heard. So your soulmate slowly opened their mouth. The room leaned forward. Every conversation stopped. Every distraction disappeared. Even the relatives who had been busy moments earlier now paid attention. Nobody expected what came next. Nobody prepared for it. Because the name that emerged was not one anyone had predicted. It was your name. For a brief second, silence swallowed the entire room. The reaction was immediate. Faces changed. Eyes widened. Conversations died. Even those who considered themselves impossible to surprise found themselves speechless. Because your name had entered a conversation where nobody expected it to appear. Questions filled the room instantly. Some family members looked confused. Others looked shocked. A few exchanged knowing glances as if pieces of a puzzle had suddenly fallen into place. Your soulmate felt exposed. Vulnerable. Yet strangely relieved. Because after carrying the truth for so long, they had finally spoken it aloud. And once spoken, it could never be taken back. Don't skip. The silence eventually broke. One relative asked who you were. Another wanted to know how long these feelings had existed. Others wanted details. Your soulmate found themselves answering questions they never imagined discussing with family. At first the explanations were cautious, short, careful. But the more they spoke, the more the truth emerged. They spoke about your character, your kindness, your strength. They described moments that seemed small on the surface but carried enormous meaning inside their heart. The family listened carefully. What started as curiosity slowly transformed into understanding. Because sincerity is difficult to fake. And the sincerity in your soulmate's voice was undeniable. Every sentence revealed something deeper. Every memory exposed emotions that had been growing quietly for far longer than anyone realized. Family members began seeing a version of your soulmate they had never seen before. Not the version shaped by expectations. Not the version trying to satisfy everyone else. But the version driven by genuine feeling. The version speaking directly from the heart. As the conversation continued, an older family member said something that changed everything. They said true feelings reveal themselves when no one is trying to force them. The room became quiet again. Because everyone understood the meaning behind those words. Nobody had asked your soulmate to choose you specifically. Nobody had pressured them toward your name. It appeared naturally. Instinctively. Honestly. And that honesty carried weight. Suddenly the discussion shifted. Instead of debating wedding plans, relatives began discussing possibility. Instead of asking why your name came up, they began asking what it might mean. The atmosphere transformed completely. What started as a routine family gathering was becoming something much more significant. Your soulmate sat quietly, overwhelmed by emotions. Relief mixed with fear. Hope mixed with uncertainty. Yet one thing was clear. Your name was no longer a secret. It had entered the room. It had entered the conversation. And now it had entered the hearts and minds of people who previously knew nothing about the connection between you and your soulmate. The future remained unwritten. Nobody could predict exactly what would happen next. But destiny had taken an undeniable step forward. A hidden truth had become visible. A silent feeling had become spoken. And once destiny begins revealing its plans, events often move faster than anyone expects. Don't skip. That night, after relatives returned home and conversations finally ended, your soulmate sat alone thinking about everything that had happened. They replayed every moment in their mind. Every reaction. Every question. Every expression on the faces of family members when your name was spoken. They wondered if destiny had deliberately created the situation. Because out of all possible outcomes, why had the conversation led there? Why had your name emerged so naturally? Why did speaking it feel terrifying and liberating at the same time? Deep inside, they already knew the answer. Because some truths wait patiently for the perfect moment. Some feelings remain hidden until circumstances make hiding impossible. And some names become so connected to your future that eventually they demand to be acknowledged. Your name had become one of those names. Not because of coincidence. Not because of pressure. But because your presence had already become part of your soulmate's vision of tomorrow. As they sat there reflecting, a realization settled into their heart. They were no longer imagining a future chosen by other people. They were imagining a future shaped by genuine love, genuine connection, and genuine possibility. And every time they pictured that future, one person continued appearing. You. The more they accepted that truth, the calmer they felt. Fear slowly gave way to hope. Doubt slowly gave way to confidence. Because sometimes the greatest relief comes from finally admitting what your heart has known all along. Somewhere beyond what either of you can currently see, pieces of a larger story are still moving. Conversations are happening. Circumstances are shifting. Paths are slowly aligning. The family gathering that was supposed to plan a wedding became something entirely different. It became the moment a hidden truth stepped into the light. It became the moment your name unexpectedly changed the direction of the conversation. And perhaps, just perhaps, it became the moment destiny quietly began opening a door that neither you nor your soulmate could fully see yet. Because when a family starts planning a wedding and your name unexpectedly rises above every other possibility, it is rarely the end of a story. Sometimes it is only the beginning. Do not skip. Days passed after that unforgettable family gathering, but the impact of what happened refused to disappear. What everyone thought would be a brief conversation became the topic that quietly followed your soulmate's family everywhere. At breakfast, someone would casually mention your name. During phone calls with relatives, questions would unexpectedly arise. Even family members who initially seemed uninterested found themselves wondering about you. It was as though the moment your name entered that room, something invisible shifted. The conversation was no longer about finding a future partner. The conversation had become about understanding why your soulmate spoke your name with a sincerity they had never shown before. Your soulmate noticed it immediately. Every time your name surfaced, their heart reacted in a way they could no longer hide. They tried acting normal. They tried changing subjects. They tried pretending nothing unusual had happened. But family members were observant. They noticed the subtle smile that appeared whenever you were mentioned. They noticed the softness in their voice. They noticed the way their eyes changed. Small details perhaps, but details that revealed far more than words ever could. One evening, while the family sat together again, an older relative asked a question that instantly changed the atmosphere. What makes this person so special? The room became quiet. This time there was no teasing. No jokes. No laughter. Only curiosity. Your soulmate looked down for a moment, searching for the right words. The truth was difficult to explain because what they felt for you went beyond ordinary attraction. It was not something that started because of appearance. It was not something created by convenience. It was something deeper. Something that seemed to grow stronger every time they tried to ignore it. Slowly they began answering. They talked about the comfort they felt whenever they thought about you. They talked about the strange sense of familiarity they experienced around your presence. They talked about how certain moments in life automatically made them wonder what you would think. And as they spoke, something remarkable happened. The family stopped seeing you as an unknown name. They began seeing you as a real possibility. Don't skip. That realization unsettled some people. Not because they disliked you, but because it forced them to reconsider plans they had already imagined. Families often create expectations long before reality arrives. They picture future weddings. They imagine future relationships. They build stories in their minds. Yet destiny rarely asks permission before rewriting those stories. One relative who had been especially vocal about previous marriage suggestions suddenly became silent. Another who once pushed different possibilities started asking questions about your background. Others quietly listened, processing information. The resistance that many expected never fully appeared. Instead, curiosity continued growing. Your soulmate noticed this shift and felt both hopeful and nervous. Hopeful because their family seemed willing to listen. Nervous because now everything felt real. The truth was no longer hidden. The truth had become part of family discussions. And once families begin discussing possibilities seriously, events can move very quickly. That night your soulmate couldn't sleep. Thoughts filled their mind. For years they had imagined what might happen if people discovered how they truly felt. They expected criticism. They expected rejection. They expected disappointment. Instead, they were witnessing something completely different. People were listening. People were considering. People were wondering whether destiny might actually be leading somewhere. The realization overwhelmed them. Because for the first time, the future no longer felt impossible. For the first time, imagining a life connected to you felt like something more than a private dream. Don't skip. Several days later, an unexpected conversation occurred between two family members who had remained quiet during the original gathering. Neither realized your soulmate could hear them. One of them said something that stopped your soulmate in their tracks. "I've never seen them talk about anyone the way they talk about that person." The second relative nodded. "Neither have I." Simple words. Yet powerful words. Because they confirmed something your soulmate secretly feared. Their feelings had become visible. No matter how carefully they tried hiding them, those emotions had found their way into every conversation. Into every expression. Into every reaction. Love has a way of revealing itself. Even when nobody intends it to. Even when nobody notices it immediately. Eventually the truth begins showing through. Your soulmate stood quietly, listening from a distance. And for the first time, instead of feeling embarrassed, they felt relief. Because hearing someone else recognize their feelings made those feelings feel valid. Real. Meaningful. The connection they carried inside their heart was no longer something they needed to defend. It was something others could see too. As weeks continued passing, your name slowly became familiar within the family. No longer surprising. No longer shocking. No longer unexpected. And that change mattered more than anyone realized. Because acceptance rarely arrives all at once. It arrives gradually. Conversation by conversation. Question by question. Moment by moment. Until one day what once seemed impossible starts feeling natural. Don't skip. Then came the evening that changed everything again. The family was discussing future plans when one relative asked a question nobody expected. "What if this is the person you're actually meant to marry?" Silence. Instant silence. The question hung in the air. Nobody rushed to answer. Nobody laughed. Nobody dismissed it. For several seconds, everyone simply sat there. Thinking. Processing. Considering. Because the possibility no longer sounded unrealistic. The possibility sounded plausible. And that realization carried enormous weight. Your soulmate's heart pounded. Not because they knew the future. Not because they had guarantees. But because hearing those words spoken aloud felt different. For years those hopes existed only inside their imagination. Now other people were speaking them too. The dream was no longer theirs alone. The possibility had entered the room. And once possibilities enter a room, they begin changing everything around them. That night your soulmate stepped outside and looked up at the sky. The air felt different. The future felt different. Nothing had officially happened. No final decisions had been made. No wedding dates existed. No promises had been exchanged. Yet something important had changed. The path that once seemed hidden was becoming visible. Slowly. Quietly. Steadily. Your soulmate thought about every twist that led here. The accidental question. The unexpected confession. The stunned silence. The family discussions. The growing acceptance. And through every single step, one thing remained constant. You. No matter where the conversation started, somehow it always returned to you. No matter how many possibilities appeared, your name continued standing apart from the rest. No matter how hard logic tried offering alternatives, the heart kept choosing the same person. Don't skip. As the days ahead continue unfolding, more truths will emerge. More conversations will happen. More doors will open. And your soulmate is beginning to realize something they once feared admitting. The family gathering that was supposed to plan a wedding may not have accidentally revealed your name at all. Perhaps destiny placed your name there deliberately. Perhaps every unexpected moment was guiding people toward a truth that had been waiting patiently for years. Because sometimes the greatest love stories do not begin with grand declarations. They begin with a single unexpected name spoken in a room full of people. A name that changes the conversation. A name that changes the future. A name that nobody planned to mention. Yet a name that destiny refuses to let anyone forget. And as your soulmate's family continues discussing tomorrow, one truth grows stronger with every passing day. When they imagine the wedding now, they no longer see a stranger standing beside your soulmate. They see you.